It was hot in King's Landing that day, the kind of dry, sticky heat that made tempers short and patience even shorter. Ned Stark stood in the Tower of the Hand, staring out the window, his jaw clenched. Below him, the city bustled like nothing had happened, like his friend Robert Baratheon wasn't dying, like honor didn't hang in the balance. But it had. It did. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, had attacked his men in the streets, unprovoked, vicious. Ned's leg still throbbed from where Jaime's man had speared him. His bones felt the pain of betrayal as much as the wound. And worst of all, Robert, his oldest friend, now king, had said nothing. The throne had blinded him. Or maybe it was the wine. Or maybe it was that damn woman, Cersei. The question now was what to do next. Ned's hand curled into a fist on the windowsill. He had enough men to storm the Lannister household. Jaime was still in the city. Ned could have him arrested, tried, executed. He could finally bring justice for what happened to his men, to Jory, who had died with a sword through his eye. Jory, who had served him faithfully since Winterfell. That death alone screamed for vengeance. But it wasn't just about revenge. It was about honor. And honor in King's Landing was as rare as snow in summer. That night, Ned summoned Peter Baelish, Littlefinger, as they called him. The man was slippery, with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Ned didn't trust him, but he needed information, not friendship. "You want to kill Jaime Lannister?" Littlefinger asked, tilting his head, amused. "I want to know what happens if I do," Ned replied coldly. Littlefinger leaned back in the chair, thoughtful. "You'd feel good for a moment. You'd call it justice. But then Tywin Lannister would bring his armies. Not to King's Landing, no, not immediately. He'd start with the Riverlands, maybe burn a few villages, kill a few thousand peasants." Ned's brow furrowed. He already hated where this was going. "And then?" he asked. "Then he'd march here. Robert would be dead by then, I assume," Littlefinger said, with mock innocence. Ned didn't answer. "Ah, so Joffrey would be king. And you'd be, what? Lord Protector? Regent? The man who executed the Queen's brother?" Littlefinger smirked. "You'd be the first to die, my lord, right after your daughters." Ned stood up, furious, but silent. Littlefinger leaned forward. "Justice is a lovely thing, Lord Stark, but sometimes justice needs to wait for the right moment, or it dies with the man who acts too soon." Ned left the room without a word. Later that night, he sent a raven to Winterfell, just a few lines to Catelyn. He didn't tell her about Jaime, didn't tell her what had happened, but he told her to prepare, to be ready for anything. The North needed to be alert. The next morning, Ned limped into the small council chamber, his leg tight under the bandages. Jaime Lannister was already there, lounging against a pillar like a golden lion with nothing to fear. Their eyes met. No words were spoken, but the tension in the room shifted. Everyone could feel it, like a storm cloud had entered the hall. Jaime smiled slightly, mocking. Ned wanted to draw his sword right there, wanted to make the Kingslayer pay for everything, for Jory, for Bran, for the chaos the Lannisters had unleashed on the realm. But he didn't. Instead, he sat down slowly, his face carved in stone. Every breath was a war inside him. Honor screamed one thing, survival whispered another. Later, as he walked the halls alone, Ned's mind replayed every moment, every option. He could still do it. Have Jaime arrested, tried, executed. But there was one face he couldn't stop seeing. Sansa. His daughter, trapped in this city of lies, betrothed to a boy with Cersei's blood in his veins. And Arya, wild and free-spirited, what would they do to her if war broke out here? He thought again of Littlefinger's words. "You'd be the first to die, my lord, right after your daughters." That night, for the first time, Ned Stark, Warden of the North, Lord of Winterfell, stayed his hand. Not because he was weak, not because he was afraid, but because sometimes the hardest sword to hold is the one you choose not to draw.
The next morning came with a stifling heat and an even heavier silence. Rumors moved through King's Landing like rats in the dark, quiet, filthy, and fast. Whispers of Ned Stark's injury, the fight with Jaime in the streets, and the sudden disappearance of several northern men had already made their way from taverns to the court halls. But Ned remained still, calculated. He spent most of the morning with Grand Maester Pycelle, pressing the old man about King Robert's condition. The maester droned on in his usual slow and pompous tone, but the truth was clear. Robert had grown weaker. The wine, the wounds, the stress, it was all breaking him down. He was barely ruling now. And Cersei, she had her claws in every inch of the throne. That worried Ned more than anything. Later that afternoon, Sir Barristan Selmy visited him. The old knight entered without fanfare, his white armor gleaming like snow untouched by dirt. He closed the door gently and stood in front of Ned with that calm, unreadable look he always wore. "My Lord Stark," Sir Barristan said, "I do not mean to intrude, but I feel I must speak my mind." Ned, still leaning on his cane, nodded slowly. "Go on." "I have served 3 kings," Barristan said. "I have seen foolishness, I have seen cruelty, but I have never seen a realm so close to tearing itself apart over pride." Ned's jaw tensed. "You speak of Jaime." Barristan nodded once. "You and I are of a dying breed, my lord, men who believe in honor. But this city is not ruled by honor. It is ruled by perception. If you strike at Jaime Lannister now, even if you are right, they will not see justice. They will see revenge, and the Queen will use it as fuel." Ned stared at him for a long moment. "And what would you have me do? Bow? Pretend nothing happened?" "I would have you survive," Barristan said, "because the realm will need men like you when the wolves and lions finally bare their teeth." That struck deeper than Ned wanted to admit. He dismissed Barristan with a nod, then sat alone with his thoughts again. The truth was rotting inside him like a wound that wouldn't heal. Cersei's children were not Robert's. They were Jaime's. That alone could destroy the Lannisters, collapse the very foundation of their claim to the throne. But the truth wasn't enough, not without power to back it. And all he had were ink and paper. His raven to Stannis had been sent, but there was no telling when, or even if, the older Baratheon brother would respond. Stannis was rigid, proud, and slow to trust, but if he moved, it could shift everything. Later that afternoon, Ned received a quiet visit from someone unexpected. Sir Renly Baratheon. The younger brother of the king was usually more concerned with fine clothes and court gossip than politics. But tonight, his eyes were hard, focused. He wasn't here to play. "You know the truth, don't you?" Renly said plainly, once the room was cleared. Ned didn't answer. "I've seen how you look at the boy, at Joffrey. He doesn't have Robert's look, neither do the others." Still, Ned said nothing. "I can help you, Ned. I have friends, men who will stand with me. The City Watch listens when I speak. We could take Cersei and her children before Robert dies, quietly, bloodlessly." Ned turned to him, eyes cold. "And put who on the throne?" Renly didn't blink. "Me." Ned laughed once, bitterly. "Stannis is the rightful heir, Robert's older brother. Stannis would burn the whole realm to ash just to rule the ashes," Renly shot back. "I would be a better king, and I can give you safety, for you and your daughters." The room fell silent. It was a tempting offer, more tempting than Ned liked to admit. Power, safety, control. But it stank of a coup. It stank of Lannister methods. "I will not dishonor Robert's name by stealing the crown before he's cold in his grave." Renly's face fell, then hardened. "Then we're all doomed." He left without another word. Ned sat in silence once again, staring into the fire. He could have had Jaime arrested. He could have supported Renly. He could have lied, manipulated, twisted his honor just a little to gain the advantage. But he hadn't. And now every road forward was blood-stained. From a balcony far above, Jaime Lannister watched as Renly stormed out of Ned's chambers. He didn't smile this time. Something was coming, and he wasn't sure if he'd survive the next choice Lord Stark made. The sun rose over King's Landing like a blade drawn too fast, sharp, blinding, and ready to cut. The city was waking up, but in the Red Keep, no one was sleeping. Everyone was watching, listening, waiting for the next move. Ned Stark felt it in his chest, the heaviness, the pull of something inevitable. He sat at his desk, his legs still aching, a fresh letter half written in front of him. This one was meant to Sir Roderick in Winterfell. If he fell, his family had to be warned, prepared. The North must not be caught unawares if the war reached them. Suddenly, the door burst open. Not a knock, no warning, just chaos. It was Arya, breathless, wild-eyed, and her sword needle still in her hand. "Someone was watching me," she said, panting, "in the dungeons. I followed a cat, like you said, and I heard men talking about killing you, about the Queen, and something called bastards." Ned stood up so fast he nearly fell. His heart pounded. "What did you hear exactly?" Arya shook her head. "I don't remember everything. They said the wolf and the lion would soon be fighting, and that you were digging too deep." For a moment, Ned's blood ran cold. The walls had ears, and his daughter, his little girl, had stumbled into something deadly. He knelt before her and gripped her shoulders tightly. "Arya, you cannot tell anyone what you heard. Not Sansa, not Septa Mordane. No one." "But—" "No," he said firm. "Promise me." She nodded, reluctantly. That night, Ned doubled the guards on his chambers and sent word to Varys, a quiet, sharp message. "I know what they're planning. I need time." But time was the one thing slipping through his fingers. Across the keep, Cersei Lannister stood with Jaime near the royal gardens, cloaked in shadows. Her face was pale, her hands clenched. Jaime leaned against the stone archway, arms crossed. "She knows," she said. "I know. He's not a fool. He's injured. He's trapped in this nest of vipers just like we are." "She sent a raven to Stannis," she said coldly. "I know it. He's going to expose the truth. Jaime tilted his head, more curious than worried. And why hasn't he done it already? Cersei gave him a hard look. Because he's playing the long game, and because he thinks he can win without blood. Jaime chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Stark's sense of honor will kill him before we ever lift a blade. Maybe, Cersei said, but he won't let it go, and we can't afford to wait until Robert dies. We need to move before he makes it public. Jaime nodded slowly. You want me to kill him? Cersei looked away for a long moment. Not yet, but soon. The next morning, King Robert summoned Ned. The king was drunk at this hour, as usual, slumped in his chair, crown tilted on his fat head. His face had gone gray, his eyes bloodshot, but he still had that dangerous, boiling anger in his voice. I hear you're making trouble, Ned, he growled, gesturing for more wine. Whispers say you're sniffing around places you shouldn't. Ned didn't bow, didn't flatter. He never did. I've done nothing but protect your name, Robert, your legacy. Robert scoffed. Legacy? My legacy is whores, wine, and a throne I never wanted. Ned stepped forward. Then take it back. Take control before it's too late. Robert looked at him, eyes heavy. Too late for what? Ned hesitated. He could say it, right here. Expose the truth. End the Lannisters. Start the war.
Ned Stark stood at the balcony of his chambers, the chill of dawn cutting against his skin. The sky above King's Landing was bruised with streaks of red and gold, and for a moment it reminded him of the north, the way winter sun touched the snow. But there was no snow here, only ash waiting to fall. He had been dreaming of Winterfell again, of quiet halls and honest words, of Bran smiling before the fall, of Catelyn's hands, warm and certain. But every time he opened his eyes, he found himself trapped in this southern den, surrounded by vipers dressed in silk. Behind him, the door creaked open. It was Sansa. She moved slowly, hesitantly, like she didn't belong. And in truth, she didn't. Her eyes were red from crying again. Since Jory's death and Ned's injury, the girl had barely smiled. But worse, she was still enchanted by Joffrey, blind to the venom that dripped from his every word. "Father," she said softly, "can we go home now?" Ned turned to her. For a moment, he didn't speak. "I want to marry Joffrey," she continued, eyes full of naive hope. "He says he loves me. He promised me children with golden hair. He's going to be a great king." Ned flinched, not outwardly, but something inside him twisted. Children with golden hair, not like Baratheon blood, not like Robert's bastards, like Jaime's. He kneeled before her, cupping her face in his hands. "Sansa," he said, voice steady, "you must listen to me. Things are happening, dangerous things. You and Arya must be ready to leave at a moment's notice." Her lip quivered. "Why? I love it here. I don't want to leave. I want to be queen." Ned felt the words rise in his throat. "You'll never be queen, because the boy you love is not the king's son." But he swallowed it. It wasn't time. "I'm doing what's best for you," he said instead. She pulled away from him, tears rising again. "Why are you trying to ruin everything?" Before he could answer, she was gone. Later that day, a raven arrived at the Tower of the Hand. A letter, the seal black and stony. Stannis.
Ned broke it open with a trembling hand. The message was brief, cold, and precise, as Stannis always was. He acknowledged the truth. He confirmed the incest. He declared Joffrey a false heir, and he would claim the throne, with fire and sword if need be. Ned's heart sank. This was the moment, the spark. If he supported Stannis now, war would follow. Cersei would never give up the throne quietly. Robert was nearly dead, and the capital would fall into chaos the second he took his last breath. And yet, this was the truth. It was justice. It was honor. That night, he sent for Peter Baelish. Littlefinger arrived, smug as always, and sat without being asked. "You've heard the rumors, I assume?" Ned said. Littlefinger smiled. "In this city, I hear them before they're born." "I have proof now," Ned said. "The Queen's children are not Robert's. I will present this to the council when Robert dies. Stannis is the rightful heir." Littlefinger's smile disappeared. "You're going to give the crown to Stannis?" he asked, incredulous. "Of all people, cold, humorless, ruthless Stannis. He is the king's brother. The law is clear." "The law does not keep you alive, my lord. Power does. Influence does." Ned stood. "I did not come here to debate morals with you." "Then let me say it clearly," Littlefinger replied. "Back Joffrey. Let the boy sit the throne and rule behind him. Marry your daughter into the crown. You'll have peace, position, and protection." "I won't serve a lie," Ned growled. Littlefinger stood too, calm as ever. "Then you'd better prepare to bleed for the truth." He left without another word. As the door shut, Ned gripped the edge of the table, his breath heavy. He could feel the walls closing in, enemies on every side, and Jaime Lannister still free, still arrogant, still a sword waiting to strike. But Ned held back again. He needed one more day, one more moment to secure his daughters, one more chance to walk the honorable path before the realm turned red. Outside, the bells of the sept rang. The king was dying, and war was breathing down the city's neck. The bells rang louder now, long, slow tolls that echoed through the streets of King's Landing like a warning to the realm. People whispered in alleys and market stalls. Lords gathered in tight circles. Maids and squires stopped their chores to stare at the red keep, where death had come quietly in the night. King Robert Baratheon was dead. Ned Stark stood beside the royal bed, staring down at the man who had once been his brother-in-arms, now just a still body, surrounded by shadows and flies. He had ruled like he lived, reckless, loud, and full of fire. And in the end, he had died the same way, torn apart not by a stag's antlers, but by his own hunger for escape from the crown, the court, and the truth. Cersei stood near the door, draped in black, though her eyes betrayed no grief, only calculation. Ned didn't look at her. He turned to the king's will in his hands, the parchment Robert had dictated just days earlier, with trembling breath and too much wine in his blood. The words were clear. Robert had named Ned as Lord Protector of the realm until his son came of age. But Ned had changed the wording, quietly, with his own hand. He had written rightful heir instead of son. A small word, but a dangerous one. He knew Cersei would notice. He knew Jaime would be waiting. Outside the chamber, The wheels of betrayal were already turning. Jaime Lannister stood atop the castle walls, looking down at the city watch assembling in the courtyard. His golden armor caught the sunlight like fire. Men bowed as he passed, but he barely acknowledged them. Inside, his sister was making her move, and Jaime, for all his wit and bravado, understood one thing well. Timing was everything. "Should have killed him when I had the chance," he muttered to himself, remembering the fight in the streets. But no, honor got in the way. Still, Ned Stark hadn't acted, and Jaime was still alive. That alone told him the Northman wasn't ready to play the real game. Not yet. In Ned's chambers, things were moving quickly. He summoned the small council, the guards, and most importantly, Lord Renly. With Robert gone, Ned knew every hour mattered. "We must act now," Renly said sharply. "Take the queen, take her children, seal the gates, control the city watch." Ned paced slowly, his injured leg stiff. "We can still do this with dignity. If we confront her with the truth, she'll see there's no way forward." Renly scoffed. "She's a lion, Lord Stark. She doesn't yield. She devours." "I gave her a chance," Ned said quietly. "I warned her to flee. I told her I knew the truth." "You told her?" Renly snapped. "Why would you—" "Because I wanted to avoid blood," Ned replied. He stared at him like he was mad. "Then prepare to drown in it." He left the chamber, furious, leaving Ned alone with his scribes and guards. Tomard, one of his most loyal men, leaned close. "You still trust the city watch?" he asked. Ned nodded. "I've spoken with their commander. He knows his duty." But even as he said it, something inside him wavered. Then the knock came. It was Peter Baelish, Littlefinger, as smooth as ever, lips curved into a polite smile. "It's time, my lord," he said. "The small council is waiting. They expect you to confirm Joffrey as king. Then they will hear the truth." As he walked toward the throne room, Ned's mind raced. Jaime was not in sight, but he felt his presence, like a shadow at his back, silent and deadly. But he swore he would keep his oath. He would do the right thing. The dungeons beneath the Red Keep were colder than Winterfell. The stones were damp, the air thick with mildew and rot. Rats skittered through the shadows, their squeaks the only sound between the walls. Ned Stark lay on the cold floor, his legs stiff, his wrists bound in iron. His beard had grown rough, and the bruises on his face were turning dark purple. But worse than the pain, worse than the chains, was the silence. He had lost. The dungeons beneath the Red Keep were colder than Winterfell. The stones were damp, the air thick with mildew and rot. Rats skittered through the shadows, their squeaks the only sound between the walls. Ned Stark lay on the cold floor, his legs stiff, his wrists bound in iron. His beard had grown rough, and the bruises on his face were turning dark purple. But worse than the pain, worse than the chains, was the silence. He had lost, not in battle, not with sword or shield, but in the game he never wanted to play. And Jaime Lannister was still alive. He thought of Sansa, of Arya. Were they safe? Did Arya escape like he had told Syrio to ensure? Did Sansa truly understand what was happening? Or had she already been wrapped tight in Cersei's lies? The cell door creaked open. Footsteps, soft, confident. Then came the voice he hated most. "You should have killed me, Stark." Jaime Lannister stepped into the cell, his golden hair falling over one eye, lips curled in a lazy smile. He wore no armor, just a black tunic trimmed with gold, the lion of his house embroidered over his heart. Ned didn't respond. "You had the chance," Jaime continued, circling slowly. "In the street, in the tower, even in the council chamber, you could have ended it. Me." Still, Ned said nothing. Jaime crouched in front of him, smirk fading just a little. "Do you know why I'm here?" "To gloat?" Ned rasped. Jaime chuckled. "No, that would be too easy. I came to thank you." Ned frowned. "Thank me?" "You spared me," Jaime said. "You held back, even when you had every reason not to. And now you sit here in chains, while I walk free." His eyes narrowed. "Tell me, Lord Stark, was it worth it? Was honor worth this?" Ned met his gaze, slow and firm. "If you have to ask that question, you'll never understand the answer." Jaime stood. "You're right, I don't. I don't understand how you let your pride walk you into a pit with wolves at your heels." He turned to leave, then paused. "They're going to kill you, you know. The Queen's working on a confession, something she can parade in front of the city. If you play along, maybe she'll let your daughter live." Then he was gone, and the door slammed shut again. Ned leaned his head back against the stone wall, eyes closed. He had tried to do it the right way, warn Cersei, protect Robert's legacy, send the truth to Stannis, trust in honor. But King's Landing had never been a place for honor. It was a place for snakes and shadows, and Jaime Lannister thrived in both. Above the dungeon, chaos gripped the capital. Cersei had declared Joffrey king. The small council had fallen in line or been replaced. The city watch was now fully under her control, and Renly had fled the city with a small host in the night. But the truth could not be buried so easily. Rumors began to spread, whispers of bastards, of brothers and sisters too close, of a king with golden hair born to a queen married to a black-haired man. And while Jaime Lannister walked the halls in silence, he could feel the tension thickening. He knew it couldn't last. He wasn't like Cersei. He didn't trust people to forget. He didn't believe in controlling truth. He believed in silencing it. And Ned Stark, chained and broken as he was still dangerous. That night, Jaime went to his sister. "He won't confess," Jaime said, "unless you threaten the girl." Cersei leaned back on her throne. "Then we'll threaten the girl." Jaime frowned. "Sansa is a child." "She's a Stark," Cersei snapped, "and she's the only leash we have on her father." Jaime hesitated, then nodded. "And if that fails?" "Then we take his head," Cersei said coldly, "with or without his words." In the dark cell below, Varys appeared to Ned like a ghost, silent and sudden. "You must listen carefully," the spider whispered. "Your life now depends on what you say." Ned didn't look at him. Varys crouched beside him. "If you confess to treason, swear Joffrey is king, they may spare you. They will use your shame to feed the lie, but you will live, and Sansa too." Ned opened his eyes. "And if I don't?" Varys paused. "Then you die, and the girl dies with you." For the first time, Ned felt the full weight of the decision pressing down on him. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about his daughter, about Winterfell, about the North. and about a choice far crueler than any sword: to die with honor or live with a lie. The crowd in the great sept of Baelor gathered early. Word had spread like wildfire. The traitor Eddard Stark would speak. The boy king Joffrey Baratheon would pass judgment. It would be a public display of royal strength and of humiliation. Sansa was already there, pale and trembling, her hands clenched in her lap. Cersei sat beside the Iron Throne with a satisfied smile, dressed in black as if still mourning Robert, but her eyes burned with quiet triumph. Varys stood in the shadows, expression unreadable. Pettius Bellish whispered into someone's ear, always plotting. And Jaime Lannister watched from above. He leaned against a pillar near the top of the sept, far from the ceremony, hidden from the crowd but with full view of the spectacle. His golden hair was tied back, his armor absent, just a simple tunic, a sword at his side. No mocking smile today, only silence. The doors opened. 2 gold cloaks dragged Ned Stark forward, his legs stiff, his wrists bound in iron. His beard had grown rough, and the bruises on his face were turning dark purple. But worse than the pain, worse than the chains, was the silence. He looked at the crowd. He looked at his daughter. Sansa, her eyes wide and wet, nodded just once and mouthed the words, "Please, Father." It was all he needed. He had thought about it every hour in that dungeon, whether to die for honor or live for her, whether to speak the lie or hold the truth and fall. But now that he stood before them all, broken and shamed, he realized honor wasn't a sword. It was a burden, one that would only weigh down those he loved if he carried it to the grave. The High Sept stepped forward. "Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, you stand accused of treason. How do you answer these charges?" The Sept was silent. All of King's Landing held its breath. Ned looked up at the boy king, Joffrey, smirk, cruel, and then at Cersei, watching like a cat with a cornered bird. Then he spoke. "I am Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, and I confess to treason." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Even Jaime blinked in surprise. "I plotted against the rightful king," Ned continued. "I urged his brother Stannis to take the throne. I was wrong. Joffrey Baratheon is the one true king." Sansa burst into tears. Cersei smiled thinly. The crowd erupted in cries of traitor, king-killer, and false wolf. But Jaime didn't cheer. He just watched. Because even in surrender, Ned Stark looked like a man bearing the weight of something far heavier than shame. The High Sept turned to Joffrey. "Your Grace, the traitor has confessed. What is your judgment?" Cersei leaned close to whisper something in Joffrey's ear, likely something measured, a life at the wall, quiet exile. But the boy had other plans. "I want his head," Joffrey said loudly. The Sept fell silent again. Even Cersei flinched. "Joffrey, I said I want his head."